Father, we give you all the glory. You are my rock, my strength, and my trust. In you I live and move and have my being. You are my shelter, my peace, and my shield. You are my everything. You are worthy to be praised. You are my rock, my strength, and my trust. In you I live and move and have my being. You are my shelter, my peace, and my shield. You are my everything. You are worthy to be praised. Sweet Jesus, beautiful King, no Father like you, no friend like you. Your love for me is everlasting. No one like you, no one like you. Sweet Jesus, beautiful King, there is no Father like you, no friend like you. Your love for me is everlasting. No one like you, no one like you. You are my rock, my strength, my trust. In you I live and move and have my being. You are my shelter, my peace, and my shield. You are my everything. You are worthy to be praised. You are my rock, my strength, my trust. In you I live and move and have. You are my shelter, my peace, my shield. You are everything. You are my everything. You are worthy to. Sweet Jesus, you are beautiful King. There is no Father like you.
All right, folks, good afternoon. It's the day the Lord has made. You will rejoice and be glad in it. I really want to thank everyone who is actually on with us right now. I want to thank God for another day He's given unto us to be alive today, to be able to discuss, to talk about important issues, to talk about important matter. I know that today, today is actually generally celebrated as the Lovers' Day, talking about Valentine, and we also know that Jesus Christ is the greatest example of love that we could ever talk about. Laid His life down so that we can live. Okay, so even though we're talking about Valentine today in the world and all of that, we also need to talk about things that are very important, especially when it has to do with Christian-Muslim dialogue, talk about the things that we engage our Muslim friends with and all of that. And I'm so glad that we have a very, very important personality as our guest in the studio today. As you all know, today we're going to be talking about searching for the non-existent Mecca. This topic, this particular one, had actually created a kind of curiosity in the minds of some of my Muslim friends. Some of them are like, hey, what are you talking about? Non-existent Mecca and all of that. But I know that by the time we get into the program of today and when Dr. J. Smith begins to talk about this, you realize that this is very important topic of discussion. You know the reason why he's talking about what he's talking about, and for some of us, it's going to be mind opening for us. I mean, it's going to be illuminating so many things that you think you know about Mecca, but you do not know. All right, so it's a great time to be here today. So please, if you have your friends around, make sure you call them. Dr. J. Smith is right here. Before I bring Dr. J. Smith into the studio, just want to read his bio, just to talk to you about some of the things about Dr. J. Smith. Of course, not everything, but at least the things that you need to know about him. And then right after that, Dr. J will be coming to present to us on the topic, the non-existent Mecca. All right, so a little bit about Dr. J. Smith, okay? So Dr. J. Smith has been working with the Muslims since 1981. Can you imagine that? Since 1981, I wasn't even born then. And he has been a missionary with the Brethren in Christ World Mission for over 30 years. He's an international teacher on Christian-Muslim apologetics and polemics, and also world famous for his fiery evangelism at the Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, London. He has participated in over 90 former public debate with Muslim polemicists. Dr. J. Smith has 2 master's degree in divinity, that's Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary, and also in Islamics, and that is Fuller Seminary. And he also has a PhD in apologetics and polemics from the Melbourne School of Theology, Australia, under the supervision of Dr. Peter Riedel. Also, Dr. J. Smith traveled extensively teaching apologetics for those exploring ministry to Muslims, and also engaged the movers and thinkers of Islam on a weekly basis. He is the founding member of the Hyde Park Christian Fellowship, a weekly evangelism ministry to Muslims in London public places, as well as a co-founder for the Pfander Center for Apologetics. Dr. J has debated among Muslim Dawah preachers like Dr. Shabi Ali, Adnan Rashid, Yusuf Ismail, Khalil Meek, Rahim Green, and the host of others. Men and brethren, I'm so glad, I'm so happy to bring onto the podium today Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J. Smith, how are you doing today?
Well, good. Thanks so much for having me come on board. We've done this before, so I feel like I'm coming back home again to talk to you there in Nigeria. I'm here on the East Coast of the United States.
Wow, Dr. J, it's nice having you here once again. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this topic, because for a while now, I've been seeing you making a presentation on something like this. It's not something that a lot of Muslims are familiar with. We have just few Muslims that are familiar with what you're going to be talking about. But even with that, to the Muslims, it seems as if what you're saying is not actually true. You're just trying to, you're just trying to raise a dust for nothing and all of that. So, Dr. J. Smith, we're going to be talking about the non-existent Mecca today. The question I'm going to ask you before you begin your presentation is, why do you think it's important for us to talk about this topic of discussion?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I think this is something that I can understand why Muslims are confused. I think the whole world would be confused by that question. I imagine when you put it out there, not just Muslims, lots of other Christians or atheists or anybody would say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean non-existent Mecca? That just doesn't make sense. It's like non-existent Nigeria. Hold on a minute. Nigeria has always existed. Well, it hasn't, and that's the problem, and that's the difficulty. Whenever you use a term of a city or of a person or of a historical object, you assume that that term is historical. When you say Mecca, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Well, if you're a Muslim, the first thing that comes to mind is that this city has always existed. This is the first place of mankind. This is where Adam and Eve were sent to. When they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. In chapter 7, verse 24 of the Quran, they are thrown down to earth. You have to go to the traditions that are the 9th and 10th century traditions. Remember, not the 7th century. You have to go to Al-Bukhari, you have to go to Ibn Hisham to find out where they were sent to. Now, Ibn Hisham won't tell you, but certainly Al-Tabari and Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they will tell you where they were sent to. They were sent to Mecca. Well, if they are the first humans, if they are the first man and the first woman on earth, that would suggest to me that it's the oldest city in history. Am I correct?
Yeah.
It was, and so when a Muslim hears you say non-existent Mecca, they'll say, you fool, you idiots. It's the oldest city in the world. How can you even question this? More than that, if you go to chapter 21 of the Quran, in chapter 21, there is a reference there to Abraham. Now, here's the interesting thing. Neither in chapter 7 that I talked about earlier or chapter 21 that I'm talking about now does it give the word Mecca in the Quran. Go look at it, see if I'm correct. It just says that Abraham goes into the Masjid al-Haram. What is the Masjid al-Haram? Well, it's the forbidden place of bowing. That's all it says. Now, Korede, could there be more than one Masjid al-Haram? And is there only just one Masjid al-Haram? Bingo.
Well, yeah.
You don't know. It's such a nebulous word. It's not a place. It's just a place to bow, a holy place to bow. So Muslims have assumed this must be Mecca. But how did they come to that assumption? Well, because the traditions say so. The traditions are very clear that the Masjid al-Haram is always, 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 always Mecca, as if there's never been another Kaaba. There have been hundreds of Kaabas. Before Islam, Kaabas were quite normal. Any town, any hamlet, any city would have a Kaaba.
Yeah.
But see, Muslims don't know this because Muslims don't ever think about history. They don't want it. There is no history prior to Muhammad. Abraham, Moses, they know the names, but ask them to tell you where these people lived and ask them to tell you what they did. And they'll just say, well, you have to go to the Bible to find that out. Yes, that's true. You've got to come to us to find that out. Because there's nothing in the Quran that tells you much about any of these great characters prior to Islam. And there's almost this viewpoint, there's almost this attitude in Islam that anything prior to Islam is Jahiliyyah. In fact, they give the word, the period of ignorance.
Yeah.
The civilization of ignorance. Until Muhammad came, everything was ignorant. Now they'll give great accolades to Abraham and Moses and Isa and all these great biblical characters, but you notice biblical characters.
Yeah.
They're all biblical characters, which means they've got to come to the Bible to find out who these characters are. They've got to come to us. And we tell them that Abraham did not live in Mecca. Abraham lived in Mesopotamia. And he moved from Mesopotamia, from the Euphrates Valley, to Haran, to what is today Israel, to the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. He never was that far down south. Nowhere in the Bible has him going anywhere near Mecca or Medina, where the Muslims say he lived. And so you can see there is a clash right there, a historical clash between the Bible and the Quran, between history and Islam, between Islam and the rest of the world. And that's why, so when you bring this question up, or even bring this notion up that there is a non-existent Mecca, that's hugely controversial for Muslims, and it gets them a little sweaty under the armpits, and then they say, yeah, we don't want to talk about this because Muslims have never talked about this. They've never looked at the historical problems of the Quran. They've never looked at the historical difficulties of their traditions, especially their traditions, because the Quran listen, if this is such an old city, if this is the greatest place on earth, and one of the center of history, according to Islam, because it's where the Kaaba has always existed. It's where Abraham and Ishmael rebuilt the Kaaba, and that's 1900 BC, if they're rebuilding the Kaaba, because we know they lived in 1900 BC. Why? Because the Bible says so. Bingo. You've got to come back to the Bible again. But if that is the case, then there should be someone somewhere who has heard about this city. Well, we're going to destroy that today.
Awesome.
We're going to destroy that today. So this is a historical question that everybody should ask, because not just the Quran, we've asked the same thing of the Bible. Listen, back in the 1800s, Wellhausen and the Tübingen School in Germany asked the same thing of the Bible. How do we know this man Abraham existed? How do you know that Moses existed? There's no reference to them. Well, that's because they were nomadic. Since when do you find reference to anybody that's nomadic? Unless you're a huge king in a large kingdom with lots of building that you have constructed, that you have the wealth to do so, you're not going to be known in history very long, because it's the kings who have the largest empires, who leave behind stelas and obelisks and all kinds of tablets and murals and all the rest. They are the ones that are known in history because they had the wealth to create those kind of structures. Look at the Bible and see if these are what the man of God were like. No, They were nomadic. They didn't build big kingdoms outside of David. And we still have the Wailing Wall of his temple today. So we know he did exist. And there's references to him. Big men like David, there are references for. Even bigger men like Jesus, you would never expect Jesus' name to be in history because he didn't build anything. He didn't leave anything behind. There was no legacy except the gospel.
Yeah.
That's why we know who Jesus was. So this is the same question we're going to ask today. If Mecca is the center of history for Islam, it's the center of Islamic world today, it's where all the people bow. If that is the case, then someone somewhere should have known about it. And we're going to show you no one nowhere knew about it. Okay.
So, all right. So, Dr. J, thank you very much for that. And now we begin to have people coming on the show. We have Good Luck Agbika, we have Ola, we have The Way of the Cross, Ogutona Femi Williams, we have a host of others of people, I mean, on YouTube right now. And we also have people on Facebook actually watching the program also at this point in time. And then when it's time for question and answer, I will actually ask them to throw into questions, and then Dr. J, you'll be able to answer their questions. So Dr. J, I think now we can actually go into your presentation, please. I want you to lecture us on the topic of the day.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up my PowerPoint here that I prepared for you.
Okay.
And of course, I'm founder Center of Apologetics. That's who I am. That's what I represent. So it'll be me. It'll be my PowerPoint that you will be seeing here. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about this whole problem of what are we going to do with Mecca, the problems with Mecca. And there are myriad of problems with Mecca. By the way, happy Valentine's Day to anybody who's out there, including my wife, if she's listening. Happy Valentine's Day. I will give her a special Valentine's greeting once this program is finished, because it's early in the morning here in the East Coast.
Yeah.
So why are we having this historical critique? What is its value? What is the purpose of asking these kind of questions? Well, one of the great things about it is what I'm doing today, and I do this all the time, and that's why in most of my talks, I do historical talks. The value of the historical critique is what we're doing today, is that it confronts the very foundations of Islam. It confronts the book and it confronts the man. This especially confronts the book. The man would be the traditions, and it confronts the traditions as well. What we're going to do today really does confront everything we know about Islam. The great thing about, though, this question that I'm asking, it is neutral. You notice this is a neutral question. Anybody can ask the question I'm asking today. This is not a Christian polemic. This has nothing to do with Christianity confronting Islam. We're not, as Christians, confronting Islam. I'm a historian confronting Islam. So this is politically correct. I am not attacking Muslims. Please, Muslim, if you're listening to me, I'm not here to attack you. I'm not going to say anything about you. All I'm going to say is Muslims, in plural, have a problem with their history. That's not attacking you. That is a conclusion I've come to after doing these studies. And you're going to see that Muslims, you do have a problem with your history. But I'm not sitting there. My intention is not to attack anybody. All right. Therefore, do not say what I'm going to be. Do not assume that what I'm going to be doing today is hate speech. This has nothing to do with hatred. Okay. This has nothing. I'm not Islamophobic for asking this question. It's ironic, whenever I question Islam, the first thing that comes back is you're a hate speaker, you're a hate preacher, you're an Islamophobe. And I say, what's phobic about what I'm asking? Listen, this has been asked of Christianity for centuries. Remember, I talked about it, Korede. I said Wellhausen asked this question back in the 1800s, coming up to almost to 2 centuries ago, and he was never called a hate preacher for asking this question. There's no such word as Christianophobe. That doesn't even exist, because it's be stupid to say that. And in some ways, I wish Muslims would stop saying, because they look stupid when they say that. They look absolutely idiotic when they call us an Islamophobe for asking historical questions about the Quran and about their history. So the other thing you're going to find, that's one reason I'm using a PowerPoint, it's very easy to communicate. It's so visual. You'll see what I'm saying, as you shall so soon see. And also, if this is a problem for Islam, if Islam has a problem with Mecca, then I, as a Christian, is the only one that really has an answer for them. If you have a problem with your Quran, if your Quran is full of historical anachronism, as we're going to show today, then where do you think you need to come home to? You need to come home to us.
Amen.
Because we don't have this problem.
Amen.
We have had everything. Almost every question has been thrown at Christianity. Every question, from the historical questions to the theological questions to the social mandate to the whole scientific problems of the Bible, they have, listen, we've had it, and we've answered every question.
Mm.
So the more we find with concerning problems in your Quran and your traditions, listen, folks, listen, Muslims, just come on home. Come on home to the Bible.
Amen.
Because these problems don't exist for us. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the geographical. Let's start, number one, with the geographical problems with Mecca. And we're going to talk about the north versus south, the Nabatean north versus the Meccan south. And when you open up the Quran, you will find that it has 65 geographical references. But yet only 9 places are named, mostly referring to people. The most common are the 3 that I have here on the left. The name Ud comes up 23 times. These people from Ud. Well, we know that Ud is the biblical Uz. That's also in the Bible. So we're very familiar with the people from Ud. Or in Arabic would be Ud. For Hebrew, it would be Uz. Okay. The people from Thamud. There's the Arabic or the Nabatean name, Thamud. These are known as the Nabateans. We know them as Nabateans in the Bible. Also historically, they are known as the Nabateans. You will find that these people from Thamud are referred to 24 times in the Quran. 23 times for Ud, 24 times for the Nabatean. The Nabateans, these people from Thamud, are the great rock engravers. They cut out entire cities out of rock. And their dwellings, their temples, their burials, their tombs are all cut straight out of the rock. And if you go to a place like Petra today, you will see that's the greatest of the Nabatean, of the people from Thamud. That is the greatest of their cities. Beautiful. One of the great wonders of the world. And then 7 times you have references to these people from Midian, known as the Midianites. Now, if these people from these places are mentioned that many times, they must be pretty important to whoever the Quran's writing about. And the Quran is always referring to these 3 civilizations, that the representative of God. Now, who is the representative? Well, Muslims will say that's Muhammad. The problem is Muhammad's only referred to 4 times in the Quran. Only 4 times. Let me give you the references. I've got them right here. He's referred to in chapter 3, verse 144, in chapter 33, verse 40, in chapter 47, verse 2, and in chapter 48, verse 29. That's it. You're not going to see Muhammad's name anywhere else in the Quran except for those 4 verses. And those 4 verses say nothing about Mecca or anything about where he lived. So all the other times that you hear references to the Nabi, the Rasul, the representative of God, the prophet of God, it's not Muhammad's name. It's just nebulous. It is absolutely neutral. Muslims, therefore, have to come and put in English in parentheses, Muhammad. That's what Muslims have done today. They put Muhammad's name in there in all those places to say, this is Muhammad, this is Muhammad. Who knows? How do they know it's Muhammad? Because his name's not there, suggesting that he's not very important either to the Quran. Ironically, Jesus's name, Isa, is all through the Quran. About 93 times you will find Jesus's name in the Arabic, not in parentheses, in the Arabic. Moses' name, Abraham's name, their names are replete, and they are found many more times than Muhammad, because he's only found 4 times. So here's a problem. If this prophet or this Nabi or this person having contact with these people from Ad, from Thamud and Midian, 23 times from Ad, 24 times from Thamud, 7 times from Midian, it suggests to me that this person is pretty close to where these people are, right? If he's having daily contact with them, they must be pretty close by, right? Yeah. Well, look at the map on the right. Look where Ad is, look where Thamud is, look where Midian is, and then look where Mecca is. Mecca is right at the bottom. Yeah. These people are all living 600 miles farther north. 600 miles. Well, how do you have contact with people 600 miles away unless you had a helicopter to go up there and back 1,200 miles in a day. There's no way in the world he could go out and having these conversations with these people from way up north all the time, and yet they are living 600 miles away, unless, of course, you lived up there yourself. Hold on to that. Hold on to that. Okay? So there's the first problem, the geographical problems. Now, let's just do a comparison, because Muslims are always say, well, you got the same problem with the Bible. No, we do not. No, we do not. And I'm going to show you right now, just look at the Quran and compare it with the Gospel of Luke. I'm just going to use the Gospel of Luke because Luke is the best one when it comes to geography, because Luke was a doctor. He used geographical locations. He talked about places. He talked about settlements, cities, places, countries, you name it. He talked about it. And there are 110 geographical references in the Gospel of Luke alone. Now, the Gospel of Luke is much, 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 much smaller than the Quran. It's just one gospel. The Quran, much, much, much bigger, only refers to 65 geographical references. So you can see there are lots more for the Gospel of Luke to go wrong with, right? 31 places are named in the Gospel of Luke. Only 9 places are named in the Quran. So only 9 places in the Quran. You would think, therefore, those 9 places are correct. You correct? Only 9 that they have to defend. We have to defend 31. In every one of those 9 places, the Quran is incorrect. I don't have time to go through all 9 of them. I'm just going to do with Mecca, because Mecca is only found once in the entire Quran.
Wow.
You can see the significance of what I'm talking about. Mecca is only referred to one time in the Quran. Now, in the 31 places in the Gospel of Luke, every one of those places is correct. We cannot find one problem with one city, one reference. Of the 31 references, not one is incorrect. They are all in the right place. In the case of the Quran, every one of those 9 places and those geographical references is incorrect. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong period. So let's look at the map, because certainly the map should tell us something, right? If Mecca was there in the 6th and 7th century, then it should be on the maps from the 6th and 7th century. Am I correct?
Yes.
If Muhammad was born in 570, that's the 6th century, and died in 632, that's the 7th century, and moved from Mecca to Medina in 622, that's the beginning of the 7th century, then certainly someone somewhere should have known about it, and this place should be in a map. Okay, well, let's look and see. This is a facsimile. This is not a real map. This is just a facsimile of the trade routes from the 7th century. Notice all those green lines, those are the trade routes. Notice where they don't go through, where the red question mark is. That's where Mecca is today. Why is it not on the trade route? Here's another one. This is a trade route, another facsimile. This is not a true map. This is just a facsimile of trade routes in the 7th century. Notice what's missing. Mecca is not there. Now let's look at some real maps. These are real maps. This one is from the 6th century. Notice what's missing? Mecca is missing. Here is a 7th century map. Look at what's missing. Where's Mecca? Not there. Where the red question mark is where Mecca is today. Why is it not on a This is the time of Muhammad. This is the time that Muhammad should be living.
Yeah.
So where's Mecca there? Here's another one. Here's a 7th century map. Still, Mecca is missing.
Interesting.
Mecca is still missing. Another one. Completely different one. These are all completely different. This is another 7th century. This is the time that Muhammad lived. This is the time you have Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. You cannot find Mecca at all. Yet they should have been living down there. Nothing. So you've got a problem here. And this was a problem for the Orientalists, those who supported Islam, not Muslims themselves, but great thinkers and great scholars in the 19th century and in the 20th century. And in the 20th century, so about 100 years ago, you had a Dr. Montgomery Watt. Dr. Montgomery Watt decided to solve the problem because you just can't find any reference to Mecca anywhere at all. So he said, hold on a minute. How did Mecca get its importance? Because if it was such a, if historically, from what the Quran tells us, from what all the traditions tell us, See, the traditions are all written in the 9th and 10th century. They're written 200 to 300 years after Muhammad. Did you know that, Korede?
Yeah. Yeah.
You did know that. But see, many of your hearers don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
All the traditions, Ibn Hisham is the first. He's the first to write down the biography of Muhammad. He was writing, well, he died in 833. Muhammad died in 632. So that's 200 years after the fact. That's the first we have of the biography of Muhammad. Then you have Sahih Bukhari, you have Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, Ibn Tirmidhi. Those are all the hadith, the sayings of Muhammad. Well, the first one of all the sayings that were written down was Al-Bukhari, and he dies in 870. That's 240 years after Muhammad. So you can see a problem with that.
Yeah.
Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, Tirmidhi, all come after Al-Bukhari. But the man you need to go to find about the history of the world and everything we know as the historical context, what we're talking about today is Al-Tabari. You need to go to Al-Tabari. He died in 926. That's the 10th century. Wow. That's 300 years after Muhammad. 300 years after Muhammad. And that's why there's such a problem here. That's why there's such a problem here. Because what we're saying is, maybe I should stop sharing it just to make this important. What we're saying here, Korede, is that obviously if this is the guy that we need to go to find out about the history of mankind, because he's the one that introduces the Tariq, which is the history, and he's the one that introduces the Tafsir, which are the commentaries on the Quran. And it's those commentaries and that history that you find out about Mecca. All right? Wow. Did you find about the Jahiliyyah period? That means the period of ignorance. That all these people before Muhammad were all stupid, idiots. That's really what it's saying. And what I'm saying is, hold on a minute. They were not idiots. They were not stupid. Please don't call it Jahiliyyah. This is not a period of ignorance. It is the time that Muhammad comes that all the ignorance starts to appear. Because they are making claim after claim in the Tafsir and in Tahriq. You're making claim after claim about Abraham and Moses. And yet almost in every case, they've got it wrong. They got the wrong man at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. What was Abraham doing in Mecca? He never was down in Mecca. And yet there it is in chapter 21 of the Quran, from verse 51 to 71. In Mecca, going into the Kaaba, destroying all the idols, coming out the next day, the Muslims then throw him, they're not the Muslims, well, the Muslims would say they're Muslims. They come and they throw him into a fiery pit. How idiotic can you get? What's Muhammad doing way down south there? See, why haven't anybody asked this question before? What's Abraham doing in Mecca? That is not historical. No historian will agree with that. Because Abraham never went that far south. Yeah. Look at all the references to him. There's nothing at all that would put him that far south. Now, let's get back to, and let's continue on with the PowerPoint. Okay, so that's why I'm bringing this up. It's important that we do unpack that. So here comes Montgomery Walk, and he brings in this trade route theory. Now, here's the trade route theory. Look at this map here, Korede. Yeah. This is a map that shows what the world would have looked like when Islam was being birthed, okay? So this is a map made in the 20th century, looking back at the 7th century. So you look on the right, the Middle East Hijrah, AD 622. So this is the time when Muhammad supposedly went from Mecca to Medina, right? Okay. That's what it would have looked like at that time. If you look at it carefully, you will see a lot of the place names don't make sense because they're not the names that we use today. So if you notice, Yathrib is the name for what is today Medina. Do you see Yathrib there? If you look on the western side of Arabia, just above Mecca. If you go way up to where Baghdad is not called Baghdad, it's called Ctesiphon. Yeah, you can see Ctesiphon right there in what is today Iraq, straight up above the Persian Gulf. So there are lots of different names, and they're not the names we would use today. These are the names from the 7th century, okay? So just to show you why if people get confused when they look at this map. Now, what did Montgomery Walk say? Well, all the trade coming from the east, that means from China, from Burma, from India, all those countries. Now, those were not the names of those countries at that time. I'm giving them modern day names so people know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yasser Qadi got all upset with me for saying that Cairo was the name of the city in the 7th century, and that Baghdad was the name of the city in the 7th century. I never said Baghdad was the name of the city in the 7th century. I'm using the name Baghdad so people know who I'm talking about. Because if I used Ctesiphon, no one knew what I was referring to. If I had said Fustat, they would not even know what I was talking about. So you have to use modern day names, okay? So people know what we're talking about. So all those countries way over in what is today China, what is today India. When they brought the trade over to the west, they were going to the Mediterranean. They could not go up north because of those mountains here where my cursor is. I don't know if you can see my cursor. See the mountains up here? That's the Hindu Kush. Those are the Himalayas. So that stopped them from going that route. They had to come to the west coast of India, which is here, and they had to take their goods across from the west coast of India, where you see that black arrow, and they had to go up through the Persian Gulf, where you see that other black arrow, and from there, they would take it across land over to the Mediterranean. So that's the route. That's the route that everybody knew what the trade went. Now, that's not disputable. No one disputes that, okay? If you look at all the historical material from the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, up until the 7th century, that is the route of the trade. Well, not 7th century, let's say up to the 5th century. Because in the 5th century, then, you had two large kingdoms. You had the Sassanians, who are the Persians, which would be Iran and Iraq today. That's the Persian kingdom. They were Zoroastrians, their religion. And you had the Byzantines over here, which is in Turkey and further west, but that would be the Byzantine Christian kingdom. So they had the Byzantines and the Sassanians started battling each other back and forth, boom, 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 boom. And because of all those battles from the 5th and 6th century, that shut down the trade going through the Persian Gulf because it was too dangerous to bring it across land from overland. At that time period. See where Basra is. You can see where Basra is right there. That's the head of the Persian Gulf. They could not bring it through Basra, through Ctesiphon, and on over to the Mediterranean world. So they had to redirect their trade. So Montgomery Watt says this is what happened. Since they could not go that route anymore, they had to then come this route across the Arabian Sea over to Aden. See Aden down there? Which is today still there in Yemen. And they would take all their goods off their ships there at Aden, and then they would go across land 1,250 miles straight up the western coast, or the western plateau, not the coast, but the western plateau, all the way up to Gaza in the north and to the Mediterranean. So that was what Montgomery Watt says was the trade route theory. That's why Mecca then became important. Why? Because Mecca is right there on that trade route. Now, Dr. Patricia Crone looked at this. Dr. Patricia Crone in 1987 wrote a book about this called Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam. Now, Dr. Patricia Crone is rather unique. Not only is she from Denmark, but she is a scholar of high repute. She's no longer living. She died in 2015, but she could read and write 15 languages, all archaic languages.
Wow.
She was head of department at Oxford University when she wrote her book, head of department in on Middle East studies. She could read and write in 15 archaic languages. Many of those languages no longer exist today. So she decided and she looked at this. She said, there's a problem here. Here's the problem. Let's look more closely at Arabia. Okay. So the goods are coming from Aden down here. They're going up to Taif there, right? There's Taif, which still exists today. And then from Taif, they go down to Mecca here and then come back up to Yathrib up there. Now, hold on a minute, she said. Taif is on the Western Plateau. So is Najran, Sana, Taif. Yathrib is on the Western Plateau. You can see the plateau there, all the mountains there. Khaybar, Taima, and all are on the Western Plateau. But Mecca is not there. Mecca is off the plateau. It's down 1,000 meters. Why would they come to Taif, then make a jog down to Mecca, and then go back up 1,000 meters to get up to Yathrib, when Mecca had no water, Mecca had no grass, Mecca had no vegetation to feed the camels? Why would they do that jog? That didn't make sense before they then went on up to Gaza in the north. Just by looking at the map, she says there's a problem here. Why had no one noticed this before? More than that, take a look at this map again. If they're coming across here down to Aden and taking off all their goods there at Aden, does that not also pose a problem? Can you see another problem with that? Now, my 10-year-old son saw it right away when I asked him this question. What's wrong with that theory of going right up the Western Plateau? Koredi, can you see a problem?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it that why would they have to go down there? I mean, it's like you're going off the road completely.
Well, they have no other choice because they can't go the other direction because there's wars going on. So that's understandable. But what are they doing if they're leaving the western coast of India? They're leaving on what? On boats. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Why do you go on boats? Why do you always use boats?
Because of water.
Because it's the cheapest way to go.
Okay.
Right? Water is the cheapest way to go if you want to take a large. Dr. Patricia found out that if you take a ton of goods, 1 ton, to take a ton of goods by land and by sea, that same ton of good would cost the same amount for 50 miles by land. Just 50 miles by land would cost the same amount as 1,250 miles by sea.
Wow.
For just going 50 miles by land. Because why? Because you have to have camels, you have to feed the camels, you have to house the camels, you have to protect your goods about the dacoits, you have to travel overland, the wear and tear that goes on, the heat that's there, you can only travel at night because of the heat, and you have to sleep during the day. All these problems, plus you have to buy the camels to begin with. Boats, however, they're already made. They last. They don't have to be fed. Boats float on water, which costs nothing. No one charges you. And you don't even have to feed them. You just let the wind push them. So boats are by far the cheapest way to send goods. And you can put much more on a boat than you can put on a camel.
That's
right.
True. Even to today, Dr. J. Smith.
Even to today. Whereas you have to have hundreds of camels to equal one boat. So because of that, it's prohibitively expensive to go overland unless you have no other choice, especially if you're going inland. But if you're not going inland, you're going over to the Mediterranean, the best way to do it is by boat. Am I correct?
That's true.
So now look at the map again, and where's the problem here? Look at the Red Sea.
Yeah. It's a tricky
Why did they go on? Why did they just go up the Red Sea?
Okay.
See, Patricia Crone asked a perfectly logical question. She says, hold on a minute, everybody look at a map again. If you're already on boat, everything's on boat, you've sailed across the Arabian Sea, why in the world would you take everything off there at Aden and go 1,250 miles by land? That's that's the distance from Aden up to Gaza. Why would you go 1,250 miles by land when you have a waterway? Why don't you just keep it on board the ships? Go right up the Red Sea.
Yeah, I think I can see what the problem is right now. I mean, they should have just moved on the sea straight up.
They should have continued on the sea.
Exactly.
It made no sense to take them across land. It would have been too expensive. Did no one ever question this before? And she was the first to question this. For 1,400 years, no one bothered to look at a map until she did in 1987. So she decided to go one step further. Now remember, she reads and writes 15 languages. She decided to go back and check this out. So she went back to the trading documents from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and she could read them all because she reads those languages. She reads the languages on the western coast of India. She reads Syriac. She reads Nabatean Aramaic. She reads all these languages. Remember, this time, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, there was no Arabic. Arabic had not yet been invented. Arabic is a new language. I don't know if you know that.
Wow.
But the Arabic we used in the Quran, was only being written down for the first time in the 7th century. Muslims know that. They know that because when you look at the oldest manuscripts of the Quran, they only have 16 letters in the Arabic. Today we have 28 letters. Where did the other 12 letters come from? They had to be created because of how hopeless Arabic is. It's one of the worst languages to communicate in with only 16 letters. That's why it's kind of stupid to say that Arabic existed at the time of Abraham and Moses and that Jesus spoke Arabic. No, none of those. Arabic never existed that early. And so as a result of that, you can see when she looked at all these trading documents, she came across a completely different scenario. Guess what she found? She found that they were not taking their goods off in Aden at all. What was happening, they were coming this direction. That is true. They were coming across the Arabian Sea. They couldn't go up the Persian Gulf because of all the battles that were going on up there. It shut down the Persian Gulf. They came to here, but they never stopped. They may have stopped at Aden to get provisions. That's true. They would stop to get provisions, but they never took off any of their goods there. They never did. They went straight up through here, right up through the Red Sea. And the city that was in charge of all that was this city that I just circled, Agilis. The name of Agilis, which was the capital of that time of Eritrea today. What is Eritrea today? The capital back then in the 7th century was known as Agilis. And it was the Eritreans that controlled the trade. Their names are all through the trading documents. There are no Arab names on any of these documents.
Wow.
Let me repeat that. She couldn't find any Arab references on any of these documents except for the people in Aden. But that was just because they stopped there. It was a stopping place to get your provisions before you went up, then up through the Red Sea. All the trade was maritime. It was always maritime from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, up until the 7th century. And there is no Arab names for a very good reason. If you look at the western coast of Arabia, there are very few ports. Most Arabs were not people that traveled by sea. They almost all traveled by camel. They were desert nomadic people. They were nomadic, and that's why all these hamlets along the Western Plateau are over 100 to 200 miles away from the sea. They're nowhere near the sea. They weren't interested in the sea. They were not boat people. They were camel herders. We know this. This is nothing new that I'm telling you. No wonder that, and in one fell swoop, Dr. Patricia Crone in 1987 destroyed the trade route theory, proving that Mecca had nothing to do with trade, that there was no trade whatsoever. Now, hold on a minute. This is going to put a wrench into every Muslim listening to me, because every Muslim knows that the only reason Mecca was important was because it was in charge of all the trade north, south, east, or west. What she did with just one book in 1987 was destroy the whole reason for Mecca being wealthy. How could Mecca be wealthy, therefore? And then, of course, she asks the next question. It's not even on any map.
Oh.
No wonder it's not on any map, because no one had heard of it yet. There's nothing about Mecca at all to talk of. So that's the second problem. So where is it and when was it inhabited? Well, we know that there's only one reference to Mecca. That's in chapter 48, verse 24. And this is what it says. And he it is who hath withheld men's hand from you, and hath withheld your hands from them, in the valley of Mecca, after he had made you victors over them. Allah is seer of what you do. In the valley of Mecca. So the one thing we know, geographical about Mecca, it's in a valley. Is that true? Have you looked at the Kaaba today? Have you looked at Mecca today? Is it in a valley? No, it's not. It's not in a valley. Ooh, you think that's bad? Let's continue on. Look what else we know about Mecca. We know quite a bit from the traditions, and we also know quite a bit from the Quran. If, of course, these references to where the prophet lived, where the representative of God lived, is Mecca. Let's just put Mecca in there into every one of these references, okay?
Yeah.
Now, remember, none of these verses that I'm going to refer to down below has the word Mecca in it at all, okay?
Okay.
Look at chapter 3, verse 96. The first sanctuary appointed for mankind was that at Becca. Is that Mecca? No, it's not. Becca is a completely different word with completely different consonants. Look at the first consonant. It's with a ba, not a ma, not a mim. It's with a b. Can you see a problem right there? Because we know where Becca is. That's a well-known place. In fact, there are 3 Beccas. Becca Valley is well-known. That's up in Lebanon. That's a biblical place. So that can't be Mecca. This place where the prophet lived is the mother of all settlements. Now, Muslims say, that's Mecca. Why? Because Muhammad lived there. In chapter 6, verse 92, in chapter 42, verse 7. Well, if it says so, then why didn't they use the word Mecca there? Mecca is not found there. We also know chapter 7, verse 24 that I talked about earlier is that when Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, which is way up in space, that Adam was, according to the traditions, not the Quran, but according to the traditions, that Adam was thrown down to Kerala in southern India, and Eve was thrown down to Mecca, according to traditions, 9th and 10th century traditions, right? So Adam was in India, Eve was up in Mecca. according to traditions, Adam got up when he was thrown down. It's obvious that God did not know how to aim very well. So he threw Eve down to Mecca, and he threw Adam, got him off, and he landed up in India.
Wow.
What does Adam do? He gets up and he strides up and he walks up and gets up and walks up to Mecca. Now stop and think. How do you stride and walk up to Mecca unless you're probably 200 to 300 feet tall?
Mm.
The idea of him striding and making his way up to Mecca, just thousands of miles away. Look on a map again. When Muslims read these stories, they don't think through how stupid a lot of these stories are. They just make no sense, right? Let's go to Abraham. Abraham in 1900 BC. How do we know that he's lived in 1900 BC? Because the Bible tells us so. The Quran never says so, but it says that he was there in the Masjid al-Haram, and he cleans out all the idols. The next morning, the people come and they throw him into a fiery pit, thinking that he had destroyed the idols. That's in chapter 21, verses 51 to 71. Now, as I said, Abraham was nowhere near Mecca at all. He never lived that far south. He was either in Euphrates Valley, or if you come across, he was all the way over to Haran, way over in what is Haran up the north, or where you go down to where we see now where Israel is today. That was 600 miles to 1,000 miles further north. What about the Qibla? Well, you've heard me what I've said about the Qibla. Have you noticed that according to chapter 2, verse 149 to 150, that it was redirected from Jerusalem down to the Masjid al-Haram? In chapter 2, verse 149 to 150 does not use the word Mecca at all. It's not there in the Arabic. Mecca is not there. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It just says the Masjid al-Haram. Well, that could be anywhere. Every town had a Masjid al-Haram. Every town had a Kaaba. Dr. Hitti, who did his, he did his great work on the history of the Arabs, he goes and shows that Taif had a Kaaba. But Yathrib had a Kaaba, Khaybar had a Kaaba, Tabuk had a Kaaba. They all had Kaabas.
So many Kaabas.
Hundreds of Kaabas. Every city had its Kaaba. Petra had a Kaaba. You can see it today. You can see the outlines of the Kaaba. Dan Gibson found out when he did the measurements on the Kaaba in Petra that it fits exactly with what the traditions that you find from the Islamic traditions. The Islamic traditions, which give the dimensions of the Kaaba, fit the Petran Kaaba perfectly. But the Meccan Kaaba that is used today, the dimensions of that Kaaba is too small. It's smaller than what the traditions say, proving that the traditions, and Azraqi, who wrote it in the 9th century, was referring to the Petran Kaaba, not the Kaaba in Mecca. So you can see the Qibla. Now can you understand why when Dan Gibson from 1979 up until 2004, when he went to mosque after mosque after mosque, he went to over 100 mosques.
Wow.
He was the first one in history to do that. Wow. The great scholar of the Qibla, the world's authority on the Qibla, Dr. David King, who is considered to be the scholar, the best mind on the Qibla. Qibla means the direction of prayer.
Yeah.
When he did all of his research, and he only did his research in libraries, he never went to any of these Kaabas. He only went to one mosque in his whole career. One mosque.
Just one.
That was the one in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. That's it. He only went to the Uzbeki mosque. One in his whole career. And yet he is the world authority on the Qibla. How stupid can you be? Can you see? How can you be the world authority and never have gone to any of these mosques that you're talking about? Dan Gibson is not a scholar, doesn't have any degree behind his name, but he lived amongst the people, learned the languages, and he went from mosque to mosque to mosque to mosque, and he used aster satellite imagery coming from space to find the exact coordinates for every one of the Qiblas. No one had done that before. And guess what he found? None of the Qiblas. None. That includes the Qiblatain Mosque in Medina.
Wow.
That includes all the mosques in Yemen and in Israel, all the way as far over as the Canton Mosque, the Guangzhou Mosque in China, the Sherman Mosque in southern India, in Kerala. All these mosques that are thousands of miles away, and they were all being built in the 7th century, in 636, 636, 642, 670, 682, 690, up until 706. 706. Look at the date. That's the 8th century, right? 706. Muhammad died in 632, right?
Yeah.
The Qibla was canonized in 624. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
The Qibla was canonized in 624. That's the time that, according to chapter 2, verse 149 to 150 that I just quoted, that's when it was redirected down to, supposedly from Jerusalem down to Mecca. That's what Muslims tell us. Yet every mosque up until 706, every mosque was facing Petra.
Wow.
Facing Petra. That's way up in Jordan. That's 600 miles further north. That's where the people of Atham would live. That's where the people of Ud live. That's where the people of the Midianites live. They live up there. Every mosque. Because the Qiblas are still there today. They're just ruins, but you can see the wall. You can there look at the wall, and you can look from space down onto the wall and look and see exactly where they're directed. And every mosque is facing Petra up until 706. So when was the first mosque that he found? When was the first mosque facing Mecca? Do you know the date? You probably don't. 727. 727.
Wow.
In Banba, in Pakistan. The very first mosque that is facing Mecca is not till 727. Muhammad died in 632. Abraham was supposed to have been there in 1900 BC. Adam and Eve were supposed to have been there in the beginning of time. And not one mosque is facing Mecca until 722. Ooh, Can you see how this just destroys everything about Islam and everything about their traditions and everything about Mecca? Now, when did all the mosques face Mecca? And from that time, they have all faced Mecca? Not till 822.
Wow.
Some say not till 876, because there's still some they think that have been found that are after 822 up until 876. That's the late 9th century that they're still facing Petra or in between, or the parallel mosque that Dan talks about. There are 4 Qiblas that he found, not just one, not just 2, but 4 Qiblas. I'm not going to get into that today. What I'm looking at is Mecca. Why is it they don't begin to face Mecca until 727? That's 100 years after Muhammad.
Wow.
Can you see? This is a problem, Muslims, and you've got to deal with this. And thank God I don't have to defend this. Thank God I don't have to give an answer to this. So let's move on. That's just the first problem, right?
Yeah.
Now, what other reference do we have? Well, let's go and let's see what else we found. Let's look and see what the traditions, and also what not only just the traditions, but also what. I've got a mistake here. I can see I've got to change that when I finish this. But let's look and see what the traditions say. The traditions talk about Mecca. Now, by the time the traditions are written down, Ibn Ishaq, forget Ibn Ishaq. He never wrote a thing that we know of. It's Ibn Hisham. That should be Ibn Hisham. Whenever you see Ibn Ishaq, that should be Ibn Hisham. Yeah. That's a typo there. I forgot to put Hisham's name. We're talking about this book right here. This is the book that it's attributed to him. So it says Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq didn't write one word of this book.
Okay, I can see that, but I'm not sure that the audience can see it because your slide is on. So if you want them to see it, you can actually. Oh, there you go. All right, so that's the book Dr. J is talking about, The Life of Muhammad.
The Life of Muhammad. And it says here, this is a translation by Alfred Guillaume. This comes from Ibn Hisham. It does not come from Ibn Ishaq. The reason why he's written Ibn Ishaq there is because of pressure by the Muslims. The Muslims are demanding that they use the word Ibn Ishaq, because Ibn Ishaq would have written this in 765. Ibn Hisham actually wrote this in 833. That's why this is he's being politically correct. But that's a lie. That's a lie. Ibn Ishaq has nothing to do with this book. We don't know anything from Ibn Ishaq. Nothing exists from Ibn Ishaq. Nothing has been retained today from 765. Okay, that's a whole nother problem we're not going to get into right now.
Yeah, I'm hearing that for the very first time, so I think we have to bring you some other time to engage with that.
I've never told you this before. Oh my!
No.
Oh goodness, you have a lot yet to learn. Yeah, everything we know about Muhammad's life comes from this book. This is the first reference to his biography. It's very thick. It's very thick. How many pages is it? I'll tell you right now. It is a huge book. It's over 800 pages. These 800 pages have nothing to do with Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq didn't write one word of this. But Muslims want you to believe that. And so Muslims demand that Alfred Guillaume and all the Europeans who have done the translation for this book, because this was written in Arabic, this was only written in 833, not 765. That's 70 years later, which makes it a real problem for Muslims, because that means for 200 years, no one knew about this man, Muhammad. Listen, Korede, we could go on for hours just on this, but let's get back to Mecca, okay? That's for another time. I'll come back again and we'll do that. We'll do that at another time, okay?
Yeah.
So let me share screen again. Let's get back to this because we have we need to get through all this. Now, what the traditions say, what Ibn Hisham al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, all of them say is this, that this place, now that it is called Mecca, because Mecca was well known by the mid-8th century. By 749, Mecca now was chosen. And we know that it was chosen by the Abbasids. The Abbasids are the ones that choose Mecca. And they change the location of the sanctuary from Petra and they bring it down to Mecca. So Mecca from 749 on is well known. Okay, here's Ibn Hisham. He's writing in 833, and he says that it's in a valley and it has a parallel valley. Well, you can see there are some problems here. Why would he be saying that when Mecca doesn't have a valley or in a parallel valley? He's referring to earlier traditions. So he's taken, remember, what did Ibn Hisham and what did al-Bukhari do? They were given all these traditions from earlier times, and they were to whittle them down and throw out that which was erroneous. So he threw out everything that Ibn Ishaq said and only retained what he wanted. But of course, he just wrote down what these earlier traditions said. And these earlier traditions are all talking about Petra. But they don't want the name Petra there, so they put Mecca in there without realizing that there's some historical problems here, including this one right here. Al-Bukhari then talks about that it has a stream going through it. There are no streams in Mecca. None whatsoever. According to Sahih, to Surah 37, and outside the ruins, in fact, 2 different times in the Quran, it refers to the fact that the prophet goes outside, and when he goes outside, he passes the pillar of salt, referring to the pillar of salt of Lot's wife from the time of Abraham, from 1900 BC. There's no way that Lot's wife or that Lot himself could have been living that far south. If there was any place that salt would have been, it would have been right outside of Petra today. What is Jordan? That it has fields, that it has trees, that this place where the prophet lived has grass, has fruit, has clay, has loam. Hold on a minute. Look at Mecca. There are no trees, grass, fruit, clay, or loam. There may be today, but they've all been transported in. Why? It's one of the most arid places on earth. There's only one well there called the Zamzam well. And no one has been able to look to see if that well is very old. I imagine it's a very new well because almost all the water that has to be brought into Mecca has to be transformed in from the Red Sea. They had to desalinate it and they have to then for all the pilgrims. There's no water there. There's no cisterns there. Mecca is one of the driest places on earth. Therefore, it would not have had trees, grass, fruit, clay, loam. Look at the old pictures of Mecca. Whenever you look at the pictures from the 1900s or the 1800s, look at it. It is as arid a place as you could find with no vegetation whatsoever. And then it says that according to Sahih 6, Surah 6, in Surah 16, that there are olive trees there. There are no olive trees in Arabia. The only olive trees that can be grown are way up in the Mediterranean, which is 600 miles further north. And then it says that they have mountains overlooking the Kaaba, looking down onto the Kaaba. Look at any picture of Mecca. There are no mountains there looking down on the Kaaba. So Mecca is not in a valley. It has none of these listed above because it is just too arid and it is just too dry. Real problem here. So Dr. Patricia Crone wanted to find out, well, then if there's no reference to Mecca anywhere, when does the reference to Mecca first appear? So she scoured all the documentations, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century. Guess when she found her first reference to Mecca? There it is right on the screen. Wow. The Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodius Continuato Byzantia Arabica. The date 741. Whoa, wow. Whoa. Muhammad was supposed to have been there and born there in 570, died and will live there until 622. Went back and reconquered it in 630. And yet the first reference we can find anywhere on any documentation is 741. 741, during the reign of Caliph Hisham. The earliest time we can find it on any map is not till 900 AD. That's the 10th century.
Wow.
Now, Crone in her work said that Greek trading documents refer to the towns of Taif and Yathrib and Chayv, but never to Mecca. There are no references to Mecca in any of these documents. She went back and she found documents from Ctesiphon. That is what is modern day Baghdad. And these are Greek documents and Pahlavi documents, which means Persian documents. And here the people in Ctesiphon were sent down these trading groups way down to Yathrib. And when they got to Yathrib, they found silver down there. So they went and started up silver mines all around Yathrib. Silver in Yathrib. And they went down these documents, talking about going down to Taif and down to Najran and going up to Tabuk and Khaybar, but no reference in any of these documents, these Persian documents, of any place called Mecca. And yet Mecca's right next door. It's just southwest of Yathrib and just northwest of Taif, down off the Tabuk. So you can see these are real problems. Mm-hmm. She's looking at documents from that era. Now, what's interesting, she didn't read the entire inscription. If she'd read the entire inscription from Methodius, Continuata Byzantia Arabica from 741, if she read the second half of it, it says, as they consider it, that's Mecca, as they consider it, the home of Abraham, which lies in the desert between Ur of the Chaldees and Kara, the city of Mesopotamia. Wait a minute, hold on a minute. Wow. Take a look on a map where that is. There's Ur, which is just north of Edessa, and where Abraham came from was Haran. According to the people in the 8th century, they believe Abraham came from there. We know today that's wrong, because now we've discovered Ur. That was just discovered in 1853 by G.E. Taylor, the British discoverer. He discovered the city of Ur in 1853, and that is now today in Iraq. But back in the 8th century, this is where they thought that Abraham lived. But when you look and see where that is, that's in southern Turkey. Mm-hmm. That's way up north. Wow. Hundreds of miles further north, proving that they've got the wrong Mecca, even in that inscription. Well, not the Mecca they have the right Mecca, but that's the first Mecca. That's the earlier Mecca. That's not the Mecca that we know today, because nowhere anybody, no Muslim listening to us will believe that Mecca existed in southern Turkey. Yeah. Too far north, once again, but directly above the present-day Mecca. And the original Mecca was located in southern Turkey or south of Edessa. Now, let's look at modern Mecca today. When you look at Mecca today, you see that huge building. I don't know if you've seen pictures. Yeah. That is the 4th highest building in the world, that clock tower. Okay, it's known as Abraj al-Bayt Tower. Let's just call it the al-Bayt Tower, okay? The al-Bayt Towers. And there's more than one. There's about 7 or 8 big buildings that are built all around it. They are huge hotels, air-conditioned hotels for very wealthy Muslims when they come to the Hajj. And they're looking right down onto the Kaaba there. Can you see the Kaaba? There's no mountains looking down on the Kaaba there. Can you see any mountains looking down on it? No, but there are buildings that are like mountains today. So they're trying to recreate the very thing that the Quran talks about. It's the world's largest clock. It has 45 feet across, and it's then designed the same way as Big Ben in London. There you can see a picture of Big Ben and that clock right at the bottom there. Now, this is what they want to make Mecca to look like. Take a look at that. It's all going to be cemented over. It's going to be a huge place. That's future. Today, this is what it looks like today. Well, this is actually about 2 years old now. What do you notice? There are cranes everywhere, right?
Yeah.
When you build buildings, you need cranes. But take a look at what they're cementing over. The Prophet's birth home is now being cemented over and destroyed. Khadija, his wife, home has been destroyed to make places for these buildings. They're just destroying the history. They don't even care about the Prophet anymore there in Mecca. But what's most important is when you build large buildings like that, 4th highest in the world, enormously tall buildings, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to build foundations. You need to dig holes into the ground. Am I correct?
That's true.
So when you dig holes in the ground, what happens when you dig holes in any ancient city in the ground? You come across artifacts.
Exactly.
You make discovery after discovery. And the archaeologists come to the building sites and they say, give us anything you find. And that's what you go to London, you go to Athens, you go to any ancient city, you go to even Baghdad, And whenever they build these large buildings, the archaeologists are there because the builders are doing their job for them. They're actually digging much deeper than the archaeologists can dig, and they're going back and recreating. They take the artifacts and then they recreate the history of the city. And that's exactly what they should be doing here. So Dan Gibson was at a conference in 2009 when these buildings were being built. And at the conference there in Arabia, he went to the archaeologists that were there. It was an archaeological conference. And he asked them, what have you found? You're there. What have you found? And they kind of looked sheepishly at him and they said, well, we've not found a thing. Zero. Not a thing. Oh, except they found an Ottoman fort from about 1299 AD. 1299. That's the oldest thing they could find in Mecca. The oldest thing that has now been uncovered from all this building that's going on. What does that tell you, Korede?
Something is actually wrong somewhere. I mean, like you said, if this is the city we're talking about, we should have been discovering things more ancient. In fact, we should be able to go back to the 7th century, the time of Muhammad. But if we can't find anything that had to go way back to that period, probably we're in the wrong place.
We should be able to find we should be able to find artifacts all the way back to Abraham.
Yeah, because
don't stop there, all the way back to Adam and Eve. If this is the oldest city in the world, then why aren't we finding artifacts that go all the way back to Adam and Eve? We're saying nothing of Abraham in 1900 BC. The oldest thing they can find so far is 1299 AD, not BC, AD.
Wow.
That's only 800 years ago. Only 800 years ago. So now, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to end off here, I'm going to look at the theories, the references, the claims that Muslims make all the time for Mecca, saying, yes, Mecca did exist. And there is reference after reference after reference. I get this all the time from Muslims. Muslims say, yes, there are 4 major claims for Mecca in the 7th century. So I want to respond and debunk every one of them real quickly, okay?
All right.
Because these are the ones we're going to get.
Dr.
One of the ones,
what they call, before you move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you move on, I just want to say to folks right here, since this is actually where you're going to be ending the presentation, I just want to tell folks, please, if you have any question at this point in time, please write them down. Dr. J. Smith will be answering your questions. So please, if you have any question, please write them down, note them down. You can put them in the comment section, either on Facebook or on YouTube, all right? So please put them down so we can actually I can put them together and then throw it over to Dr. J. Smith to give a response to those questions. And if you want to also call in into the show, the number to call in is actually on the screen, 234-8127-999-591. So if you want to call in, that is the number to call in. But if you want to send in a question, please, you can actually put it in the comment section, either on Facebook or YouTube, and then I'll send the questions over to Dr. J. Smith. All right, so Dr. J. Smith, please, you can actually go on right now.
Okay, and we don't have much more to go. This is we're going to be ending with this. So here you have the first claim. It's called the Samaritan Asatir from 200 BC. The Samaritan Asatir. Now let's go and see what it says. Well, according to the Samaritan Asatir, it says this: all the sons of Nebaioth reigned from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates, and they built Mecca.
Wow.
Mecca. Okay, boom. Oh, looks like this is Mecca. They found Mecca in 200 BC in this Asatir. Moses Gaster, a British rabbi and Orientalist in 1927, believed that the Asatir was archaic, reflecting an early stage in Samaritan thought and literature, which the Samaritans of his time could no longer fully interpret. Therefore, he put forth the date of no later than 200 BC. So this comes from 1927 by a British rabbi and Orientalist named Dr. Moses Gaster. Morris, Ian D. Morris is the man who really has debunked this really quickly. Ian D. Morris, and I give credit for everything I'm going to be doing now, is from Ian D. Morris, who's done some great work up on the internet. You can see his material. He confronts this date, suggesting that the authors lived under Muslim rule, as it includes conversations with Muslims as well as Jewish scholarship. Now, two specialists, Zaev Ben Hayam and Christophe Bernard, proposed a range of dates for the Asatir from the late 10th century to the end of the 11th century AD.
Oh my.
So they're saying, hold on, how can you be talking about a Muslim rule and having conversations with Muslims and Jewish scholars unless there were Muslims around? There were no Muslims in 200 BC. The word Muslim didn't even exist that early.
Hmm.
So it's obviously that this Asatir was not written in 200 BC, like this Moses Gaster suggested. This was probably written in the 10th or 11th century, just because of the internal content that's there. The Asatir is therefore not pre-Islamic reference to Mecca. It's simply much too late to be pre-Islamic. What about Diodorus? This is probably the bigger one. This is the one that most people point to. There are two ones that are most bigger, of this one and Makaraba. Let's look at Diodorus's reference to Mecca. Edward Gibbon in 1788, in his book called The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 5, states that Diodorus referenced Mecca in the 1st century writing. That's 1st century BC writing, okay?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Now, Diodorus is well known. He was a scholar and a historian writing in the 1st century BC. No one doubts that. No one doubts that. But he was quoting a man named Agatharchides. And Agatharchides was writing in the 2nd century BC. And he says this. He refers to a very sacred temple has been established there, which is highly revered by all the Arabs. And it's that reference to sacred temple and all the Arabs, which Diodorus is referring to. No, sorry, not what he's referring, which Muslims like to point out. Now, to understand what Diodorus and Agatharchides are referring to, you need to go back to when this all happened. You need to go back to the 3rd century BC. You need to go back to Ptolemy II in Philadelphia. He is the king at that time in Egypt, and he has sent one of his generals called Ariston to check out the Gulf of Aqaba. He wants to go and have a military expedition in the Gulf of Aqaba. But before he goes there, he wants to check out the location, the land, to see if it could accommodate large armies, where the mountains were, where the best place to get there, where the best place for encampments. So Ariston makes this trip to the Gulf of Aqaba. And it's his description that Agatharchides picks up in the 2nd century BC and refers to. But when you just quote a very sacred temple has been established there, which is highly revered by Arab, if you're just going to quote that bit, quote the rest of what he said.
Exactly.
Because then he gives him something more specific. He says it's a bay or gulf, which is known as Kaabas, somewhere south of the Gulf of Aqaba that runs inland about 500 stadia. Now, stadia means the length of a stadium that they used at that time. And if you look at 500 stadia, that would be about 90 kilometers, all right, or 60 miles. And therefore, it's in the Gulf of Makaraba. And then he goes on and says the mouth is too craggy for ships to traverse. So it's a place that's too craggy that ships cannot go. So there's a temple. Note, it doesn't say Kaaba, it just says temple, which is revered by all the Arabs. And that's why Muslims claim that this has to be Mecca. Well, let's look at the mouth of Aqaba. There's the Gulf of Aqaba. This is what Agatharchides' temple for all Arabs is referring to. There's the Gulf of Aqaba, located 90 kilometers from the mouth, from the Tiran Island is what he wants. So there's the Tiran Island. 90 kilometers would be about there, right? That's what it's pointing to.
Okay.
So what is there that's 90 kilometers from Tiran, from the mouth of the Aqaba? Well, Wadi Ainuna is there. Wadi Ainuna. What is Wadi Ainuna? Wadi Ainuna is well known. There is a temple at Wadi Ainuna. This makes absolute sense. This is absolutely historical. But where is Wadi Ainuna? Well, take a look at it. Let's look back here. Let's pull back. Where is Wadi Ainuna in relation to Mecca? Well, when you go back and you look at all the Mecca, you know that reference after reference of Gulf of Aqaba, Tabuk, Medina, Saleh, Khaybar, and Yathrib are well known in the ancient days, especially at the 3rd century BC. What's fascinating is this Wadi Ainuna is there. Look where Wadi Ainuna is.
Yeah.
It was well known then as well. Even today, it's still well known. In the 3rd to 1st century BC, the only known Arabs would have lived up north around the area of the Gulf of Aqaba. They didn't know anything further south than that. We'll get to that. Hold on to that idea. But Mecca was not known at all back then, as it did not exist. Look where Mecca is. Look how far away. So, how far is Wadi Ainuna from Mecca? 962 kilometers.
Oh my, oh my.
600 miles away.
Oh
Ooh,
my.
Haven't we heard this before? Isn't this the same thing we got earlier with Petra? Petra is just north of this place here. That is 10 times further than the 90 kilometers Agatharchides and Diodorus are referring to, proving that they were not referring to Mecca at all. Not at all. What about this phrase, highly revered by all Arabs, that they keep on talking about? It's highly revered by all Arabs, therefore it must be Mecca. Wouldn't that also include the Arabs of the Hijaz and further south? No. Take a look at a map. This is a map of the Roman Empire, the Roman era. Look and see how much they owned. And look especially at the green area called Arabia Petraea on the right side at the bottom. See that? That is the Arabia they know. They never went, look at it, everything else is white because it was all barren. It was all barbaric. They didn't go outside of that area because that was not what their interests were. So when they say all the Arabs, they're talking about Arabia Petraea, that part in the green. And this map was made in 125 AD. So this is another 2 centuries later. There simply were not any Arabs further south than Arabia Petraea from their standpoint. And we're looking at their comments. We're looking at their phraseology. All the Arabs went to that temple because that was the only Arabs they knew. And that was the only temple that existed at that time. So this has nothing to do with Mecca. All the Arabs that Agatharchides and Diodorus knew were only up north. Okay? Now, what about Pliny the Elder's Debunking Regio from 79 AD? For the students of ancient Arabia, Pliny the Elder, who died in 79, is indispensable. Pliny's description of the Arabian Peninsula is cogent and sometimes corroborated by other ancient writers. Now, there's no reason to think that Pliny himself ever did field work in Arabia. He relied on earlier studies, often citing the popular works of Juba II, who was a Mauritanian living in Rome, who wrote about the northern Arabian Peninsula. Among the places in Juba's description of Arabia is Debunking Regio, or the region of Debunking, where he writes, after the Dogs River, according to Juba, there is the Taludaid tribe, the Debunking district, Mount Orsa with its harbor. That's all he says, right? In 1970, the geographer Hermann von Wissmann proposed that this was the territory belonging to the Quraysh, as well as Mecca and its environs. Debunking would then mean literally that which belongs to the sons of Quraysh. Now, therefore, this must be Mecca because the Quraysh were in Mecca. Ian Morris debunks this very quickly. And this is what he says. Wissmann reads Quraysh into Namagogiris, but that oris is a declension, not an integral part of the root word. If Debunking Regio is the region of Debunking, there is no room left for the Quraysh. Patricia Crone says very clearly the term son of Quraysh, Banu Quraysh, is a bit faulty. Quraysh is the name of the tribe, not a patriarch within the tribe. So the patronymic name, sons of Quraysh, would have made little sense to anyone. Geographically speaking, however, take a look. Pliny cited Juba, and Juba follows the Arabian coast from Kharax, which is just north of what is today Basra in Iraq, down the Persian Gulf where those arrows are going, around Oman, dropping the name Debunking Regio along the way. Well, do you see a problem with that? Even if you're going to say that this is Mecca, look and see where it's placed. It's on the wrong side of Arabia.
Exactly.
It's on over by the Persian Gulf, hundreds of miles away. Now, even if you want to impose the word Quraysh onto the word Debunking, I don't know how you can, but if you wanted to, you see, this is absolutely idiotic because you've got to read the rest of what the Juba was saying. Juba was saying that they would come down with the trade from what is Khaybar today. That's the Iraqi Khaybar, not the Saudi Arabian Khaybar. There are two Khaybars. This is the Iraqi Khaybar. Sharax is its better name. And you follow those red arrows along past Qatar, over the United Arab Emirates, over to what is today Oman. That would be Oman. That is hundreds of miles away. possibly even thousands. I'm not done a reference, probably maybe thousands. It is evident that Dabanogoris Regio has nothing to do with the Quraysh. And even if it did, the region could not include Mecca, as it is on the eastern coast of Arabia and not the western coast. It's on the wrong side of Arabia. Now, here's the big one. This is the one that everybody believes. And Korede, you probably come across this one as well. Makaraba. Makaraba must be Mecca. From the 2nd century AD, Ptolemy, you don't pronounce his first letter, P. Just say Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, yeah.
But I see it there. It's like Pfander. You know, Pfander, the name that I call my YouTube site, named after Dr. Carl Pfander. It's a German spelling, but there is a P. There's a Pfander. You're supposed to say Pfander, so I say Ptolemy. So let's just go with Ptolemy.
Okay.
There's Makaraba. Claudius Ptolemy, a Greek writer and geographer from Alexandria in Egypt, wrote a guide to geography between 141 and 147 AD. In it, he gave coordinates for a place called Makaraba, 73 by 20 by 22. Notice Ptolemy's map. Now, that's a map that has been recreated from his drawings. So that's what people look like today of what he was trying to describe. So that they call it the Ptolemy's map on the right.
Okay.
Makaraba is southeast of Yathrib. Look where he places Makaraba. See Yathrib up there?
Yeah.
Makaraba is southeast of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's more, Mecca is southwest of Yathrib. So he's got it in the wrong place to begin with. Okay?
Yeah.
If Makaraba is Mecca, then he misplaced it. Well, hold on a minute. So why do we think Makaraba is Mecca? Well, the reason why is because you need to go back to Europe and you need to see where Makaraba was chosen. Why Muslims are using it today is because of the Europeans. This has nothing to do with Muslims or Islam. It's the Europeans who decided this is Mecca. And you need to go back to this guy named Samuel Bocard, a French historian, in 1651. So we're talking about the 17th century. Yeah, we're talking over 350 years ago. He claimed that Makaraba from Ptolemy must be Mecca. Johann Heinrich Zedler in 1739 included this supposed reference to Mecca by Ptolemy in his German encyclopedia. Then in 1799, Konrad Manner, the Prussian historian, suggested that the word Makaraba meant a temple. Wow. In 1846, then, the 19th century, the German scholar Albert Forbiger referenced Makaraba as Mecca in his encyclopedia, which canonized the idea for most Europeans ever since. And then in 1890, Edward Gasser suggested that the word Makaraba was a Southern Arabian word for mihrab, which then meant a place of worship. Consequently, since then, most every Western scholar now believes Makaraba is Mecca.
Wow.
That's why this has come out of Europe. This has nothing to do with Islam or Muslims. And this is why, you know, I love it because it shows that we in the West are just as stupid as many of the Muslims claim we are. Listen, I love I love finding any error in European geography. So we're going to show you what's the problem with this. Dan Gibson found a problem immediately. Gibson noticed that there was a number of city locations on Ptolemy's map, which are well known today. Ptolemy correctly identifies the Yemeni ports of Musa and Aden, or Emporia Arabia as it was known, and Khane. This provides us with 4 rivers and 3 coastal cities that we can identify today, according to his writings. Gibson matched the towns and cities with the rivers, which still exist today, and overlaid them on a map at right. So there's what he came up with. And Makaraba would have been placed right there. But you see a problem there. Look at where some of the cities land. Unfortunately, if you put it on a modern day map, because remember, the map that Pliny had was all off skew. It was complete. You can tell he did not look from a satellite. He did not have satellite to get the right dimensions. So everything was all skewed out of proportion. So if you take those same cities from his map and put them on a modern day map, this is what you get. Unfortunately, this puts some of the cities into the Arabian Sea, which would not be exactly healthy for the inhabitants. They wouldn't live very long if that's where they were located.
Exactly.
You see a problem there?
Yeah, I can see that.
So Gibson found a solution. He noticed that Ptolemy's rivers, the location on the rivers today. So he just took the rivers that are well known today, and then he looked and showed where they were in relation to those rivers. And then he said, well, let's put those and let's correct those places. And then you notice what you put when you correct them according to the rivers, then you get them all on land. The problem that Ptolemy had is that he never went into the interior. He never traveled in the interior because it was all desert. Therefore, he did not know how large the desert was. He had no idea just how large it was. And that's why he put all these places that were actually just inland from the shore, he put them way up north, thinking that they were up north because that's as far as he traveled. No, there were thousands of miles of desert up there that was unaccounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you look at them, almost all these places are what we know today as Yemen and Oman. By shrinking Ptolemy's map southward to accommodate the desert, many of the locations suddenly fit. Makaraba then became what we do today know as Al-Mahabisha. Mahabasha has, and that's what happens. The names of places change over time. It's nothing more than a little hamlet. And that's where it's located today. Makaraba was not only an interior settlement of Arabia, but it turned out to be only a small hamlet situated in the Hadramaut area of Arabia. And it had nothing to do with Mecca and nothing to do with the Kaaba. So Patricia Crone, therefore, concludes in her bestseller, Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, devoted a number of pages arguing against the supposed evidence for Makaraba. She noted that it was situated in the wrong place, but most importantly, the word Makaraba and Mecca are not the same word in Arabic. They aren't even pronounced the same way. They only enjoy the first letter, nothing more. She concluded the plain truth is that the name of Makaraba has nothing to do with that of Mecca, and that the location indicated by Ptolemy for Makaraba in no way dictates identification of the two. Ian D. Morris, the expert on these previous names of Mecca, says this: etymologically, Makaraba has many problems. It is telling that after 350 years of experimentation, we have a handful of incompatible etymologies, none of which quite fits. It is also telling that 5 very different interpretations have resorted to languages that flourished outside ancient Mecca: Aramaic from Sprenger, Hebrew from Bokhar and Dazi, and Old South Arabian from Glasser and Ali. Why then is there still a consensus that Makaraba is Mecca? The idea was first noted in the 17th century. In the 18th century, it found its way into the encyclopedias, and in the 19th, it was fairly common knowledge among Orientalists. Konrad Manet helped to popularize the idea, but it was probably Albert Forbiger entry in Pauli's encyclopedia that assured its place in the canon of Orientalist thought. It is not impossible, he concludes, that Mecca is Makaraba, but right now, given the state of the field, there is no rigorous way to bridge the two names. It is easier to conclude that they are different places. Patricia Crone seems to be vindicated.
Wow.
Now I'm going to come to my conclusions. So, why the historical critique? The geographical difficulties are just too great to ignore. The 3 major civilizations purportedly around Mecca are 600 miles too far north. There are no maps from the 6th or 7th centuries with Mecca on it. Montgomery Watt's trade route theory has been completely debunked by Patricia Crone. There are numerous other problems with Mecca, such as it is only referred to once in the entire Quran. The tradition suggests there was much vegetation in Mecca when there was little to none. The earliest reference to Mecca is 741, which places it in southern Turkey, much too far north. And it looks like the Muslims in Arabia are now trying to cover up any archaeological evidence, possibly because they have heard what we now know. And every claim for 7th century Mecca or earlier have been debunked.
Wow.
I'll end my PowerPoint there. Back to you. And can you see, if you're going to say that Mecca is where it existed in the 7th century, you're going to have to prove it. And as I've said already over and over again, please don't waste my time with the 9th and 10th century. I've already thrown them out. I don't care about this book anymore. This is nothing more than fiction. Show me evidence for Mecca in the 7th century. That's all I want to hear. Give me something from the 7th century or earlier. But don't waste my time with the 9th and 10th century anymore. Okay, back to you.
All right, Dr. J. Smith, and that was a huge ride. I mean, this is actually mind-blowing. And as we're making the presentation, one of the things that comes to my mind is, why is an issue like this not very popular among the Muslims? Or why are they not really taking it very serious? I mean, I've seen Muslims debate a lot of topics. I've seen them giving speeches on a lot of topics, but rarely do they talk about this. Now, I was listening to one of these mufti, I can't remember his name now. He's a very popular mufti on YouTube. I don't know why I should forget his name now. Okay, yeah, that's Mufti Abulait. And he was talking about some of these things that you have to say concerning the Petra, Mecca, and the rest. And it said that, yeah, that some of the arguments that you give, some of them were quite convincing. That they find some of them quite convincing. But then what stand out to me is that why is this not enjoying a kind of widespread debate, discussions among the Muslims? Why are they not really seeing this as something very important? And because this actually goes to the very core, the very foundation of Islam. If the Mecca of Islam is actually wrong, then the whole thing is wrong. All right. So why are they not taking it very seriously? This is actually one question that
But you just
I'd
answered
actually.
your question. You've given the question, you answered it all in one breath. I don't have to say a thing. You just answered it.
It's actually battling that, yeah, they are not really saying anything about this. So, Dr. J, let me see if we have a couple of questions right here because I've
Can
seen.
you see clearly what you have just said? You've got, and I hope the Muslims who are listening pick this up. What you have just done, Koredi, you've asked the question, why aren't they taking it seriously since it destroys everything about Islam? Why aren't they taking it seriously? Bingo. If you were a Muslim, would you want to hear this, what I've just said today?
Exactly.
No.
In fact, I want to listen to you.
Uncomfortable.
I want to listen to you, but then listening to all of the things that you've said so far, it's really, really damaging. I mean, I would want to think, what is actually going on? What exactly can I know about Islam? If the very thing that I think I could be very sure of, which is actually Mecca, is not really, is not coming through, I can't really get my hands on it to know that this is actually the truth about Mecca. Then how many more things are we getting wrong? How many more things are we not getting right? So it's actually a troubling thing for me. If I were a Muslim, it's going to be really troubling for me. And that's the reason why I actually want the Muslims to listen to this. And I hope that they will begin to take this more seriously because this actually needs attention. I want the Muslims to respond to this. Really want them to respond to this. Okay, Dr. J, let me quickly see if we have a couple of questions. I wouldn't want to hold you for that. We've done how many hours now? We've done almost, we've done 1.5 hours, yes, which is actually, you are breaking a record on the show, Dr. J, because most of the time we usually have about 1 hour on the program, or at least 1 hour, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But then we've done 1.5 hours. I'm not sure we've even done up to 20 minutes before, 1 hour to 20 minutes. No, we've not. But you've done about 1 hour, 30 minutes now. I was just glued to your presentation, and this is actually quite interesting. So let me just read a couple of comments right here, and then I see if there's a question. So we have Richard Delusa. Richard Delusa is actually appreciated, thanking you, showing the heart of love right here. That's I believe, a heart of gratitude. We have Samuel Uluwalano. He's saying hello, sir. We have Ajayi Paul Olatubos. He say hello, Bro Corredi, God bless you. And then we also have Bro Floyd. Bro Floyd says Mecca wasn't existing until 740 AD. Okay, I want you to comment on that, but let me just quickly read the rest. Then we have a comment from Emmanuel UMA. He says, I watched a brilliant I think he's trying to talk about a movie. I watched a brilliant movie, and we researched a well-researched video documentary that proved beyond doubt that the Islamic Mecca could be well a location in Jordan, Petra. I guess he's talking about Dab Gibson's documentary. And also we have Sister Shinyeri Priest right here. Says, great job, apologies, nice to hear Dr. J. Thank you very much for coming in too. And we also have Huge Saver. He says, interesting. And he also says, thank you for putting this together. We have Shai J. Massams. He's saying so much knowledge is being shared freely. Thank you so much, Evangelist Corredi and Dr. J. Smith. So Dr. J. Smith, a lot of people are actually appreciating what you are doing right here. Bro Floyd Ola is saying, God bless you to Dr. J. And then we have Spill Abadu. Spill Abadu is saying, wow, this is loaded. We need a lot of time to digest them. Yes, I can actually say that, Dr. J, a lot of information you put out there today needs a lot of processing. I mean, it's a whole lot you put out there. And then we have a comment right there from Emmanuel Ime. He said, thank you so much, Mr. Alawi, and my profound gratitude to Dr. J. Smith. I'm a student of Christian apologetics, and my favorite area of study are in the areas of archaeology and history. My first exposure to this topic was a video documentary from Tracks called The Sacred City, discovering the real birthplace of Islam. The masterpiece, narrated by Matt Jami, is based on Dan Gibson's book on Quranic geography. The most convincing point for me is the Qibla proof. So here's the question he's asking Dr. J. He says, what are the implications of this truth on the Islamic faith today? That is number one. And then number two, he's asking the question, please point to me places I can continue this excellent study. So those are the questions for you, Dr. J, and you can go ahead and answer them.
This is the book you need to get.
Okay.
This is the book that has destroyed the Qibla. And it just came out in 2017. It's only been out about almost 4 years now. It is full of picture after picture after picture. It's just lots of pictures. It's very, very well put together with graphs and maps and you name it. Dan Gibson has done a slap-up job of putting that together. And he is the one that has really destroyed any notion that there was any Qibla. Now, his area of expertise is Qibla, which is the direction of prayer, that there are any mosques facing Mecca until 727, which blows this whole thing out of the water. His other book that he did in 2011, this one here, is called Quranic Geography. Quranic Geography by Dan Gibson. And you can get this online. You can get it in a PDF format, or you can buy it like this for just only about $15 to buy it. Just put Dan Gibson Quranic Geography PDF, and then you can buy it by pulling it down and paying $15. That one really shut down this whole notion of the geographical problems with Mecca.
Wow.
But it's been this material, to answer the question, what this does is destroy any notion that there was an Islam in the 7th century. And what we have been trying to do at Pfander is ask this question: if there was a religion called Islam in the 7th century, then somewhere, someplace, there must be a reference to that religion, Islam. We can't find any. Somewhere, someplace, there must be a reference to the people, Muslims. We can't find any until 690. Somewhere, someplace, there must be a reference to a man named Muhammad, the originator of that religion. We can't find anything until 692. 692. Muhammad died in 632. Can you see the problem?
Yeah.
For 60 years, no reference to this man named Muhammad. Somewhere, someplace, we must find reference to this book called the Quran. We can't find any Qurans, any reference to it until the 8th century, till 705. And then somewhere, someplace, there must be a reference to the city called Mecca. Those are the 5 things we're looking for: Islam, Muhammad, Muslims, the Quran, and Mecca. We can't find reference to any of those 5 things, not from the 7th century, not prior to 691 and 692. So that's the dilemma for Muslims. They are going to come up with reference after reference after reference from the traditions about Mecca, about Muhammad, about Muslims, about Islam, and about the Quran. But they cannot find anything from the century all these places existed. If Mecca existed, if Muhammad lived there from 570 up until 622, if this is where he went to in 630 to take it over, there must be a reference to that somewhere in that century. You cannot find it. So this is a perfectly good historical question to ask. And I'm glad I'm not in the shoes of the Muslims. I wouldn't know what to do with this. I would pretty much leave Islam if this is what they are now finding. If they cannot even find any reference. Now remember, hold on a minute. We have to ask the same question of Jesus Christ, right? Did Jesus live in Palestine? Was he born in a place called Bethlehem? Did he die in Jerusalem? Can we prove that? Can we prove he even existed in the 1st century? Definitely. Now remember, this is the questions that was asked in the 1800s by Wellhausen, by many of those scholars in Germany in Tübingen school. They asked those very questions back in the late 1800s. That's over 150 years ago. They asked the same question. What about Jesus? Who is this historical Jesus? Did he even exist? Did he die on the cross? And rise again? So these are questions that have been asked of us for the last 150 years, and we answered every one. But how did we answer it? We went back to the 1st century. We went back to the time. We went back to people like Phlegon, and we went back to people like Tatian. We went back to Josephus, Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, the same man I just quoted earlier. We went back to the writings. And we looked over and over, and they referred to Jesus. They referred to him by name. They referred to his death. We know that Tacitus even said that he died under the auspices of Tiberius. So these are why we can show that Jesus did exist in the first century, because we have Phlegon and Marcion who are having a debate in 52 AD, that's 20 years after Jesus died. If he died in 33 AD, this is roughly 20 years later, they're having a debate about it. Oh. They are Greek historians. They are not Christians. Tacitus was a Roman. He was not a Christian. Yeah. Josephus, who talks about Jesus, even talks about his death and said that the Christians believe he rose again, was a Jew living in Rome. He was not a Christian. None of these are Christians. So we have passed this test with Jesus Christ and the beginning of Christianity. And we know that Jerusalem existed back then. We know that Bethlehem existed. We know that Nazareth existed. Those are not in doubt. No one doubts those cities. Yeah. Why is it that Muslim can't even support the most important city in the history of mankind? The greatest city for all Muslims is Mecca. It's the center of the world. It's the beginning of the world. It's where Adam and Eve were sent to. If that is the case, why can't they support it? One city. We're just asking for one city. That's the vacuum that exists in Islam. And if Islam cannot answer that question, then it has no right to make the claims it makes. And for Muslims listening, you might as well leave that religion, stop talking about Islam, stop talking about Muhammad, and stop talking about this book, because we have not even told you what we now know about this book. Wait till we get into that material. Yes, whoa. So historically speaking, the historical critique is by far the most damaging critique for Islam. It is the Achilles heel of Islam. And the reason why Muslims haven't heard about it is because they won't let you talk about it. They won't let you talk about it. They will censor you. That's why they censored Alfred Guillaume from writing Ibn Hisham here. They forced him to write Ibn Ishaq here. Muslims are very sensitive about this material. And they will hammer you, call you hate preacher. They will call you Islamophobe. They will get death threats like they did to Patricia Crone. Dr. John Wansborough, when he wrote Chronic Studies and Sectarian Milieu in 1977 and 1978, he got death threats for writing those two books. He had to leave his work in London and move to France. This is what Muslims do. They kill you when they don't like what you're saying, or they give you death threats. We don't do that as Christians. Thank God we don't say anything. In fact, we engender and ask people, please, please hold the Bible up to scrutiny. Hold Jesus Christ up to scrutiny. Hold up everything that is there in the gospel up to scrutiny. And you ask the historical questions of Jesus Christ, because he answers every question.
Exactly, and that is what Brother Eman is doing today. Nobody is after him. Nobody is wanting to kill him, even though he's criticizing the Bible, saying that the Bible is not the word of God. And we have a lot of Muslims trying to use his argument today. But then he has not really received death threat from Christians. Say, hey, we're going to hunt you down because you're trying to pull down what we know to be our faith and all of that. No, he's still free to go to lectures. He's writing books. And the man is just feeling so fine. Thank you very much for that, Dr. J. I think we have a question for you right here from YouTube. And the question this person is asking, the question is coming from Bra Ehu. And here's the question. It says, why are these facts just coming up now? Shouldn't we be aware of this information earlier than now? So Dr. J, you can answer the question.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a brilliant question. And that's the elephant in the room that Muslims don't want to talk about. This is not our religion. This is not our faith. This is not our history. Yeah. Why is it that we're asking these questions then? Why is it Muslims have not asked this question? Why is it that Muslims for hundreds of years have never looked at their own history? And the reason is because they don't see a need for it. They believe that everything that happened before Muhammad is jahiliyyah, is ignorance. Therefore, there's no reason to ask any things prior to Muhammad. Well, I'm saying, I'm going one step further. I'm not talking about before Muhammad. I'm talking about Muhammad himself. Prove that to me first. But this has not really been there. Remember, very few people have dared ask this question about Mecca or Muhammad or Islam or Muslims or the Quran. You do not, it's not healthy to ask this question, especially if you're a Muslim. Especially if you're a Muslim. Look what happened to Salman Rushdie when he wrote the satanic verses. He was under house arrest, hiding for 10 years. Exactly. Look what happened to Taslima Nasreen in Bangladesh when she dared to say that there's a problem with the hadith. There's a problem with 2 parts of the Quran.
Yeah.
She had to leave Bangladesh and she's now hiding in Norway. Look what happened to Fazlur Rahman in Pakistan when he dared to say that the 2 parts of the Quran, the Meccan and Medinan, that the Medinan material just is not relevant for today. The Meccan, the latter part of the Quran is relevant. He got a death threat and he was killed. So Taha Hussein was the one that was killed. Fazlur Rahman had to leave Pakistan, so he had to go into retirement. Sorry, I got the 2 mixed up. Taha Hussein said much the same thing, and he was killed for saying that. So you don't live very long. It's not very healthy to ask this question if you're a Muslim. Therefore, I'm not expecting Muslims to ask this question. We have to ask this question. And Korede, this is the question we as Christians should ask more than anybody else, because I don't really want atheists and humanists to ask this question. Because they're going to destroy Islam, but they're not going to provide anything as an alternative.
Yeah.
They're not going to give the Muslims anywhere to go. Only Christians should be asking these historical questions, because only Christians have passed the historical test. I don't know of any atheists or any humanists who have anything as an alternative. They have no antidote for these questions. They have nothing to give the Muslims. What a waste of time. And what a terrible thing to do, to destroy their faith and then just to give them nihilism. Who cares about nihilism? I want to bring them home.
Amen.
I want to bring them home.
Amen.
So we really are the only ones that need to ask this question. We are the only ones that need to do the research. Others can do the research, but if you're going to come to the conclusions that the research takes you, for heaven's sakes, give them something as an alternative.
Yeah.
Give them something that they can put their hopes on. These beautiful men and women from Islam, they love God. They love history. They love the scripture. They already understand a high view of scripture. Atheists and humanists know nothing about it. They have nothing about God. They have nothing about scripture. They don't care diddly squat about miracles. They don't care diddly squat about heaven and hell. But my Muslim brothers and sisters do. And that's why I'm saying, for heaven's sake, forget about atheists and the humanist argument. Come on back to Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Because what we have to do is a real gospel. What we have to give you is a real history. What we have to give you are places that do also have already passed the historical test. Come back to Jesus, who was born in Nazareth, who lived in Bethlehem, died in Jerusalem. Those places existed at that time. He really did that. And he died for you and me. He died for that we could be saved, so that we can be with him forever. What a gospel. What a message. And it's historically proven. It's been historically corroborated. And we've been doing it for 150 years.
Amen.
So we're the only ones really that have an alternative, an antidote, and the answer. The 3 A's: alternative, antidote, and the answer.
Amen.
Come on home. Come home.
Wow, that was a full lecture loaded of love. I mean, like Dr. J. Smith said, to Muslims, we're not doing this because we hate you. This is not hate speech. We're just asking important questions about the origin of Islam. And if you care for your soul as a Muslim, you really want to investigate some of these things. I mean, take a look at what Dr. J has said, references upon references, and then take a look at it more intimately and say, hey, is this thing actually true? I mean, why have we really not questioned this? Why are my scholars not really talking about this? Why are they not engaging with this argument? So it's not all about we wanting to hate you, and the reason why we're doing this is not because we hate you, rather we love you. That's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. Dr. J, I really want to appreciate you. Somebody's asking if you could call into the show. Yes, Bro Chaka, if you want to call in, you can actually do that. You can actually call the WhatsApp number. I think this is gonna be the last call or the last question I'll receive for Dr. J. Smith, so I can release him right now. I mean, I've been holding him on for a while right now. It's almost 2 hours now. I mean, we've been on for almost 2 hours, so I want to release him. So, Bro Chaka, if you want to call in, this is the time to call in, and you can call the WhatsApp number. Then we'll be able to pick up your call, Bro Chaka. So while Bro Chaka is trying to call in from the WhatsApp, I'm just going to read up a comment from Bro Chaka. He actually quoted an hadith, and I think you're going to be finding this very interesting, Dr. J. Let me read this hadith narration for you. He actually quoted from Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari volume. Okay, so it's the volume. Okay, great. Sahih Bukhari volume 5, book 58, hadith number 160. He said, narrated. So sorry, Jarir bin Abdullah narrated, there was a house called Dul Khalasa, okay, Dul Khalasa in the pre-Islamic period, and it was called Al-Kahaba al-Yamaniya, okay, or Al-Kahaba al-Shamiyah, okay? So it now says, Allah's messenger said to me, will you relieve me from Dud Kalasa? So I left for it with 150 cavalry men from the tribe of Hamas, and then we went to destroy it and kill whoever we found there. Then we came, okay, Brachaka is calling, but I will just hold on, Brachaka. Then we came to the prophet. Okay, so now we came to the prophet and informed him about it. He invoked upon us the good of the tribe of Hamas. So I think what he's actually trying to say is that the prophet of Islam actually ordered some people, his followers, to actually go kill people there and also even destroy that Kaaba as well. I think that's corroborating what you're saying, Dr. J, talking about the different Kaabas and all of that. But I want him to actually talk about the reason why he's asking or why he's posting that edit narration in the very first place. Brachaka, how you doing? Hello, Brachaka, how you doing? Hello, Brachaka, are you there? I think we lost that call from Brachaka. Hello, Brachaka, are you there?
Let me go ahead and answer him.
Okay, please.
On this,
okay.
This is what he's observing is fascinating, because what he's saying is even the traditions support the notion that there were other Kaabas.
Okay, Brachaka, just hold on. Let Dr. J. Smith actually finish answering your question. Then you can actually ask him questions again, Brachaka.
Okay.
Go ahead, let him answer.
Okay. All right, Brachaka, Dr. J. Smith asked that you ask your question. Oh, I don't know what is going on with the WhatsApp line. It's just cutting. Brachaka,
okay.
Are you there?
Listen, let's go ahead and talk about what he said, and that's a very good observation that he's brought up.
Okay.
What he's saying is, this idea that there is only one Kaaba, that Muslims always talk about this one Kaaba that existed only in Mecca, and only there could have been a Kaaba, is actually spurious, because even the traditions refer to this Kaaba way down in Yemen. Yemen is today in the southern part of Arabia, and he sends this. This is the 9th and 10th century. I don't believe any of this happened, by the way, but nonetheless, according to traditions, he sends down his warriors to go and destroy the people there and to destroy the Kaaba that is there. The fact that it's referring to a Kaaba in Yemen suggests that there were Kaabas all over the place. So there is not just one Kaaba. There are a multitude of Kaabas. And stop and think. A Kaaba would make sense, because it's where you would go to...
Brachaka, Dr. J is still answering your question, so he's going to be finishing up soon, so you can ask your question. Sorry, just hold on for a few minutes. Yeah, Dr. J, continue, sir.
So no, I'm just to say that this makes sense, and I would suggest that Brother Chaka has it correctly. He's observed something that if it was historical, it would make sense that it got even into traditions. Why aren't Muslims are aware of this if this is their own traditions? Well, the simple answer is they don't even think about this kind of material, because they don't even look. They don't look and see the implications of that. But the implications are very clear, that there are Kaabas everywhere.
Yeah. All right, so Brachaka, you can go ahead and ask your question now. Dr. J is still on the show. You're going to be the last person asking question on the show, and then we can allow Dr. J go. All right, Brachaka, you can ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. J, for coming in today and opening our eyes more.
Sorry, Dr. J, can you hear Brachaka?
Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Okay, he can hear you. Okay, he can hear you. So continue.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show and enlightening our eyes. My question, rather, I didn't really get to hear your answer because of the delay, but I'm sure I caught a little bit of what you said, that there was a multiple of al-Kaabas, and that's actually what it is. Because if you read from the hadith I just quoted, this is actually the Kaaba that was found in Yemen. And it's also called they say it's also called Kaaba al-Shamiyah, which is the Kaaba of Sham, which is Syria. There seem to be a lot of Kaabas. I would agree with you, but then the Quran does talk about the valley of Baca. Now Muslims try to point to, I believe, in the book of Psalms. It does talk about the valley of Baca, and they try and point that. I don't know what would be your comment on that. I was trying to get the exact verse in the book of Psalms, but that talk about the valley of mourning or something like that. And then Muslims try to institute that this must be in reference to the same.
Okay, so Dr. J, you can go
Let
ahead
me
and
answer that.
yeah.
Yeah, the valley of Becca is not the same word. Becca starts from a completely different letter. Becca and Mecca are completely different letters that they start with. And Becca is well known.
Okay, continue, please. I was hearing a kind of
Becca,
echo, so I had to hang on the call. So continue, Dr. J.
yeah, so Becca is quite well known. Listen, there are three different Beccas that are well known. One is in the Sinai Peninsula, one is just outside of Israel, and one is way up in Lebanon. And it's the Becca Valley that this is referring to that is in Lebanon. So that is a valley. It's still there today. It's still called the Becca Valley. It's where the Shiites are in control. And it's been in the news quite a bit in the early part of this century. So that is not in doubt that Becca is well known. But Becca, don't get confused with Becca, just with Mecca, just because it sounds alike. Okay?
Yeah.
Are you going to say that New York and the city of York are the same places because they have the same word? No. New York and York are two different cities in two different countries and two different continents. So that's why people are confused when they say, it sounds like Mecca, therefore it is Mecca. No, it isn't. Becca and Mecca are two completely different words. It's not the same city.
All right, thank you very much,
Again,
Dr.
Where is this valley of Mecca? Where is this valley in Mecca? Mecca is not in a valley. It's very plain with small mounds as hills, but there's no valley there.
All right, Dr. J,
Okay.
I'm so grateful. Thank you very much for your time. I think I have to let you go now. We've done 2 hours, full 2 hour stretch. And I really want to say this has been an interesting topic of discussion for me personally. And I believe that a lot of my audience actually also enjoyed this topic of discussion. And like one of the commenters said, this is full of information and it takes time to process. And again, more importantly, I think we're going to be engaging our Muslim friends with these questions, and they really need to provide answers. Now, if they can't answer that, they need to go to their scholars to begin to work on this. This is actually something very important they need to talk about, because if they cannot answer for all of these things that you brought about, then it means that the very foundation of Islam is destroyed. And if that is destroyed, then there is no hope. And like you will say, I will just tell them they should come on home. Yes, they should come on home. Jesus is actually waiting for them. So Dr. J. Smith, I'm so grateful. I'm so happy that you're able to come on the show. I know you're a very busy person, and also having you on the show by 1 p.m. our time, 7 a.m. your time, I know that can be a bit challenging. I know, you might want to say, hey, you can wake up early and all of that, but then I know it's challenging. So I really want to appreciate you, and all of the viewers on the program, they also appreciate you, thanking you for the information that you provided freely. I mean, this is information that sometimes you would not be able to get in a Bible school seminary or theological seminary, okay? So, but you provided this for us freely, so we're so thankful to you. We're so grateful for what you've done, and we pray that the Lord will continually bless you, continually strengthen you, give you more grace, and also more wisdom to do what you do. So folks, if you want to see more of what Dr. J. Smith does and the things that he produces, the videos and all of that, please, you need to go to Pfander Films, okay? On YouTube, just type Pfander Films and you'll be able to get into his YouTube page. And in fact, Dr. J. Smith releases more videos that I could hardly keep up these days. Before you know it, is released another one. Before you know it, is released another one. So please, I want you to subscribe to the video. I know somebody actually asked about if you want to know more about this, a student of history and apologetics, make sure you glue to Dr. J. Smith, okay? Subscribe to the channel, and then you can get more information about that. Now, Dr. J. Smith, I think I should also give you the opportunity to talk about the training you're having in the university. I mean, is that something you want the audience to know about, just in case if they're interested in coming?
Yes, certainly. Yeah. If there's anybody that would like to learn more of this material, we now have a master's degree and that you also can take it for a doctorate, but it's a master's degree program. There are 10 courses, 36 units. It takes about 2 to 3 years to do the entire thing. If you don't want to do master's degree, you can do it by an audit. You can do it in audit form. That's so you don't get a degree with it, but you get a certificate. If you don't want to do an audit, you can just do it for personal enrichment, which means you just attend and you get all the lectures and you get all the PowerPoints. Now, this is ongoing. We're in right now. I have a course on this. What I've just been teaching today is part of my course. This is one of my lectures. And this is actually, I don't give my lectures out freely all over the place, but I do to you, Corede, because you're a good friend.
Thank you very
But
much.
this course is all online. It's all on Zoom. You don't have to come to California where it's being headquartered. The headquarters is at Veritas International University. We're accredited by the National Accreditation Format. So everything you get here, you can use anywhere in the world.
Awesome.
The accreditation goes right out. You can use it in Africa. You can use it in Europe. You can use it in Asia. You can use it in South America or United States.
Okay.
So certainly it is an accredited program. You do need to, of course, and what we might do is if you just put in there registrar at ves.edu.
Okay.
Registrar, that means registrar. I'll put it when we do this, when I put it up on Pfander Films, I'll put it there, I'll write it out. Registrar at ves.edu. If you just write to the registrar, they'll send you all the information you need. But yeah, that's ongoing. In fact, I was just teaching it on Thursday night.
Wow.
To about 43 students
Wow.
that we have full-time that are going on. 43 students from all over the world, including Nigeria. We have one from Nigeria.
Awesome.
That's taking. So
Awesome.
we do want to encourage all of you to come take it, as many of you can. We'll be doing this right now. I'm going through the historical problems of Islam right now, and I'm going through 10 courses, 10 lectures on all the difficult problems. Mecca is just one of them. In March 23rd, we'll start up with a new course on just looking at Muhammad. And Dr. Daniel Janasic and myself will be teaching that one, starting on March 23rd. At the same time, Al-Fadi, my good colleague Al-Fadi, will be doing another course at exactly the same time, 10 lectures on the practices and the beliefs of Islam, the deen and the iman of Islam, and he'll be debunking everyone. And you can't get anybody better than Al-Fadi himself, who is Saudi Arabian, grew up as a Muslim, speaks Arabic fluently, it's his mother tongue, and yet has done such a great job of unpacking all these beliefs and practices and showing how in every case they are fraudulent. So that's something that you'll get starting from March 23rd.
Amen, amen. All right, so folks are saying that they actually love what you do and they appreciate you as well. So folks, if you want more of what you've just gotten right there, you want more, please actually go to Pfander Films. I keep saying Pfander Films. Pfander Films. Go to Pfander Films and then you see more of what Dr. J is actually saying. Then after this video, I'm going to be putting a link to, I'm going to be putting the registrar at, the information that Dr. J provided, so you can send an email to that particular email address and then you'll be able to get all of the information that you can get concerning the program that Dr. J had actually talked about. So really want to appreciate everyone who has been on the show. I want to thank you. I want to appreciate you. I won't be able to stay much longer on the show because right after this time, by 4 p.m., we're going to be having a debate. So please, I have to release Dr. J right now so that I can also go prepare for the debate between Bra Chaka and also Bra Suleiman, so they can have, they're going to be talking about crucifixion in the Bible and the Quran today, so it's going to be a nice time. So Dr. J, really want to appreciate you, want to thank you, want to make sure that I actually release you so that you can do all of the things you want to do.
Thank you.
Most likely you might want to take your wife out for the Valentine, so I didn't really want to take your time at that. So please, my regards to your family, my regards to your lovely wife, and my regards to everyone that works with you. God bless you for all that you do, and the Lord continue to strengthen in Jesus' name. So from this place, and from every one of us right in Nigeria watching, and also the crew that are working with us, Seasoned Apologists, we're saying bye to you, and God bless you, Dr. J. Thanks for your time.
God bless you.
All right. Okay, so folks, like I said, by 4 p.m., we're going to be having a debate between Bro Chaka and also Bro Suleiman, and that is what you're seeing right there on the screen. The topic they're talking about is crucifixion in the Quran and crucifixion in the Bible. 4 p.m., and then it's going to be live on this channel, so please, by 4 p.m., you can actually stay and then watch the debates, all right? So they're having two debates, actually. So they're going to be starting with the crucifixion in the Quran, and thereafter, they're going to be going on with the crucifixion in the Bible. So again, it's 9 a.m. in the morning. That's in the U.S. time, Eastern Standard Time. It's 6 p.m. in the Eastern African time. And also it's 4 p.m. Nigerian time. All right? So please, I want you to stay glued to that. By 4 p.m., come on and join us again. It's going to be shared both on Facebook, stream on Facebook, and YouTube at the same time. Also, Lord willing, next week, we're going to be having a good brother and friend, and also a very revered brother, Reverend Samuel Green, is going to be coming on the show next week, Lord willing, to talk about the topic, what does the Quran say about the Bible? What does the Quran say about the Bible? And this is the part 1. Again, it's going to be 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to be 11 a.m. Nigerian time. So please, I want to take note of this timing. Anytime we have Reverend Green on the show, is usually actually 11 a.m. in the morning, because it's 9 p.m. his time, so we need to accumulate that. So the topic is talking about is, what does the Bible say, what does the Quran say about the Bible? That's going to be an interesting topic of discussion, something you don't want to miss. Also, Lord willing, next 2 Sundays, which is going to be the last Sunday in February, Sunday 28th February 2021, we're going to be having our brother Rudolph Boshoff, okay? He's going to be the guest speaker this time around. He's coming all the way from South Africa, and the topic he's talking about is Allah and Yahweh. What are the differences? Allah and Yahweh. What are the differences? So we want to know the difference between Allah and Yahweh. And that's an interesting topic you don't want to miss again. It's going to be 1 p.m. Nigerian time, and it's going to be 2 p.m. South African time. Also, if you are on Patreon, so please support us on Patreon, support what we do. We have a whole long way to go. There are so many things that we need to get done, and we're so grateful the Lord is helping us. But you can still help us more by going to Patreon, and that is patreon.com/Seasoned Apologist. And you can give whatever you can give to help us, so we can continue to do what we are doing. Also, we are on social media. You can find us on Facebook, all right? And that is Seasoned Apologist on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter, and that is actually at Seasoned A on Twitter. And also, you can find us on Instagram, and that is at Seasoned Apologist on Instagram. Also on YouTube. So we discovered that a lot of people that are actually watching our program on YouTube are not subscribed to our YouTube channel. Now, if you want to get an update of what we do, the videos we release, the program, and all of those things, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Send it to some of your friends who are actually ministering to the Muslims or into apologetics, so you can get more information. And if you want to reach out on WhatsApp, the number to reach out is right on the screen, 234-8127-999-591. If you want to go to our website, and that is www.seasonedapologist.com, and if you want to reach out to us via email, you can also do that via info@seasonedapologist.com. We've been receiving a couple of emails. Sorry, we've not really been responding because we have a lot in our hands, but please be rest assured that when you send us an email, we will try to respond to you as soon as we can. So I really want to thank everyone who had actually made this possible. Really want to thank you. God bless you. Those who have actually asked the questions, those who have called in, really want to thank you. Appreciate you. Please keep praying for us. We need your prayers. We need your prayers. We need your support. We have a whole lot of things we want to do. Lord willing, we're going to be having Seasoned Apologist Conference this year. The information should be out. The full information should be out, Lord willing, by next week. And then we'll be keeping you informed on how it will go. Again, thank you very much. Pray for those who are bringing on the show, that the Lord will continue to protect them. The Lord will have mercy on them. The Lord will expand their ministry. So thank you very much for everyone who has joined on the show. My name is Theodore Lawoye. I need to sign out right now because I need to prepare for the debate that is happening by 4 p.m. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
We love you, Lord, we love you. Father, we give you all the glory. You are my rock, my strength, and my trust. In you I live and move and have my being. You are my shelter, my peace, and my shield.